Okay, cool. Let's crack a lack. Meeting. Keep on top. Well, I have a sore head. I'm nervous.
How do we want to start it? Hello, welcome to.
What are we calling it?
I thought we were going to call it Uphill From Here.
I do like that. Let's call it that.
Hello and welcome to Uphill From Here.
This is Cathryn.
And this is Amy.
And this is our new podcast. Welcome. Hello.
Welcome. Hello. Who are you and how do we know each other?
Okay, so my name's Amy, as you know. I'm 22, recent drama graduate, freelance stage manager, which currently means unemployed. And me and Cathryn met 4 years ago now, nearly.
4 years ago now.
At university. Yeah. Cathryn, who are you?
So my name is Cathryn. I'm 22 and also a recent drama graduate. I just finished a contract as a drama facilitator, which also means unemployed at the moment. And me and Amy met at Liverpool Hope University 4 years ago, and have basically been each other's rocks since then. I don't think I could have done it without her. So yeah.
So we always said we wanted to work together. Like we said we could write something together, co-direct, and the timing was never quite right. We've always said, and the podcast idea we've been talking about for probably a year, and we just didn't have the time. We weren't in the same city with our work schedules. It just wasn't the right time. And now lockdowns happened. We're we have so much spare time and we want to chat. We want that creative outlet. Now we're not working. So podcast.
Yeah. And we didn't even know Zoom existed a year ago.
Nobody did.
So kind of knowing that we could have the recording element of Zoom and we could kind of keep this as a kind of we're having a conversation in separate places was a really kind of great idea for a podcast. The kind of whole basis of Uphill From Here comes from the idea that when you turn 21, because that's when this idea was born, you're always told, oh, it's all downhill from here. And it's kind of great. But then we had a discussion one day that we realised that actually it's not downhill from here because it's not easy. Downhill is easy, uphill is hard.
Yeah, especially living through your 20s, graduating, but also trying to navigate a career in the arts. It is an uphill struggle. It's going to be difficult for both of us and what we want to do. And yeah, I think we're not at that age where we're over the hill. So we want to talk about the kind of navigating our 20s post graduation in the arts industry. So we both have that in common. So we'd really like to talk about that and hopefully help and reach out to others that are in the same boat. I know people graduating in the minute are kind of in a really weird situation. So yeah. We kind of just found it really interesting, the expectations of what's going to happen in your 20s. So before you're 30, a lot of people expect you to have a solid job, have a house, get married, have kids. That's just the kind of expectation. I think especially for two young women, we're really passionate about our careers right now. So we want to kind of discuss that and use this platform and our time to express an alternative perspective to what's usually kind of expected of a woman in her 20s. Yeah, so we're kind of going to discuss a range of topics that will affect a range of different people. So things like graduating, starting your career in the arts, and relationships and expectations.
Whilst also talking about things like body image and university life and kind of health in all forms. So mental health, physical health, sexual health, all those kinds of things.
A plethora of topics. Good word, plethora. So obviously it's just our first episode, kind of a pilot. We're just trialing a different kind of format, seeing how that feels. So yeah, any feedback, what you think of the podcast would be great. So let us know.
Please let us know. First episode, we kind of thought, what is a topic that we can talk about now that's really relevant, that's really kind of prominent in both our lives, that we both have a lot of opinions on and a lot of thoughts on, and that is lockdown. Because obviously that is kind of the reason that this all started and where we're kind of coming from at this moment in time. Like, we're still in lockdown, and kind of our thoughts and feelings on that and how that's been for the last 3 months, 4 months.
It's been a long time. I don't
Been
know.
a
I
long
feel like it's,
time.
for me, it's kind of flown. Like, I feel like March was like yesterday. Do you think it's gone?
Yeah, I don't. It's a really weird perception of time, because it feels like a long time since I've seen people, but not so long a time actually being home.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
It's a weird one. And obviously we've had very different experiences of lockdown, because obviously Cathryn's in England and then I live in Scotland. So we're kind of in that weird kind of like different guidance, different leadership. So that's been really weird to kind of keep up with. And also I live near the border. So and my sister lives in England and a lot of my family and friends do. So it's weird to see how the two different countries are coping.
Definitely. So we are going to write letters. And from those letters, we're going to talk about the subjects in those letters and our thoughts and opinions on that. Those letters not necessarily being a current thing, but maybe to our past selves, our future selves, someone that we know, someone that we don't know. And that kind of stems from this idea that all the way through our uni life, we would have discussions where it was things that we couldn't control, or conversations with someone that we couldn't have anymore. And we would kind of say, just write a letter, like write it all down, get it all out of your head, and then put it on the mantelpiece. And, you know, kind of putting it on the mantelpiece is kind of our thing.
So we're gonna kind of, we've discovered like writing, and like we haven't been able to communicate with loved ones in the same ways that we could when we had that face-to-face contact. So we feel like writing has really let us kind of explore how we're feeling on different topics. And it's been like a real catalyst for this podcast, because we're kind of considering each other's writing and how we feel about that. So so this is like our mantelpiece. This is where we're putting all of our private thoughts and feelings. We're writing them down to ourselves, to other people, to people that might never actually read that letter unless they listen to this, and sharing that with the world. And hopefully we'll be able to help people if we're perhaps writing back to our past selves, maybe people that are like 16, 17, 18, whatever age. We'll read it and be like, oh, this is what the future perhaps holds for me, or there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's something that's really important to me. If I'd have had someone a little bit older than me when I was 16 giving me advice as to what's coming, it would have been very helpful. So we just kind of want to like help people and be able to reflect and share our experience. So basically me and Cathryn have written to someone, we don't know who, about our experience in lockdown. That's how we're gonna frame this and how we're going to express ourselves. And we've sent each other a digital copy of that letter that we've written. So who wants to go first? Who wants to read first?
Shall I read first?
Okay.
Yeah?
Cool.
You happy with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dear pre-lockdown Amy, a word of warning, 2020 will not be your year, or anyone's for that matter. The world is in a bit of a mess right now, a bit colossal mess. You're going to live through a global pandemic. You're going to live through a moment in history that generations after you will be taught about. You're going to see the leaders of some of the most powerful countries in the world neglect their responsibilities and some of their most vulnerable. You're going to lose your job, and so will thousands of others. The West End will go dark. Your entire industry is going to shut down, part of your industry disappearing with it. You're going to feel left behind, forgotten. You're going to have to leave London and move back to Scotland. You're going to be stuck in isolation. You're going to be living with your parents again. You're going to be apart from loved ones, and you're going to miss your friends. You're going to miss your job a lot. You're going to feel really shit sometimes. You're going to feel alone, scared, uncertain, overwhelmed. Some of the time, you're going to hate it. You're also going to get more time at home with your parents. To 16-year-old me, that probably sounds more hellish than the pandemic itself. You're going to have time to breathe, to slow down. You're going to have more time to be creative, to connect with new people, to educate yourself on some pretty important issues. You're going to gain perspective. You'll watch communities come together and business use innovation to adapt and keep going. You're going to look inside yourself and actually deal with some of the shit you would have continued to suppress. You're going to learn to knit. You'll get a new sewing machine and actually use it this time. You're going to fall in love with exercise. I know. You're going to find new ways to connect with your old friends. You're going to feel at home again. You'll finally get through the list of stuff you've been meaning to do but never had time for. You're going to have time. You're going to go on lots of walks. You'll read books, make playlists, and cook new recipes. You'll watch as much live streamed theatre as you have live theatre. You're going to learn to drive, hopefully, and you're going to start a podcast. You'll feel blessed, content, creative, hopeful. Some of the time you'll appreciate it. Most importantly, you're never going to take a hug from a friend for granted again. Lots of love, Lockdowny. Oh, how does it make you feel to hear someone else reading that?
I spotted all my mistakes. I'm kidding. It's interesting to like hear someone read your thoughts and read your like, because I feel like when you're writing to yourself or you're writing a diary or whatever, or a letter that you're going to leave on the mantelpiece like we talked about, you don't ever expect anyone to like reveal your vulnerabilities. And I feel like when you're writing for you, you can say whatever you want. You can say, I feel crap, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I feel alone, I miss my friends, stuff that you might not actually say to them and say out loud. And I feel like that's the power of writing, because you can write it all and they're just words on a page. But when someone reads them aloud, it expresses your vulnerabilities out loud and it puts them out into the world and they're real. Suddenly they're off the page and they're alive. And that's a bit scary.
Yeah.
But I think that's great, because this is what's going to happen. Like, we're going to touch on some pretty personal topics and some things that may upset us and may be really challenging to think about and explore within ourselves and write about. And having someone read those aloud to whoever is listening is scary. When you I didn't actually think it was going to be this revealing. What did you think reading it? Like, what did you think of my take? Because we just gave ourselves the challenge of writing about lockdown in any sense to anyone.
Yeah.
So like, what did you think about my take on it?
I think initially, like, I started reading it and I was like, oh my God, you've thought about completely different things to me. You know, you've thought about like this bigger picture of like the whole world in kind of your first paragraph. It's kind of like, you know, world leaders and big, like, colossal, like, you know, movements of people kind of happening all over the world. And I thought that was really interesting that you kind of took that take on it. But that's something that I know personally has been quite a big thing during lockdown for you. You know, kind of through our discussions and stuff, it's something that you've taken a lot of time to focus on and to kind of educate yourself on, which is really, really interesting. I related to it, I think, massively. You know, I could kind of, if I were to read that and I didn't know it had come from a friend, I would go, oh my God, I get that. Like, I can feel that. I understand that. So yeah, I think I get it, definitely. I think the only thing that I kind of can't relate to, and we've kind of had this conversation before, where I didn't feel that, like, that fear of going home because of just that differing kind of feeling towards that. But yeah, I really related to it and I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I think when I was looking back on it, like reflecting like what lockdown has done, like there have been times where I've felt extremely bored and extremely sad and extremely alone. But I didn't want, if I'm writing back, so this was framed as to pre-lockdown advice to someone in the past that I maybe was, and no one could have anticipated a pandemic. Like,
no.
And if a year ago someone had said all this weird stuff, like you're going to talk through Zoom and everyone's going to wear masks and we're going to do quizzes, and it just, nobody anticipated it. It was a complete surprise. So I didn't want to kind of write back and just write that lockdown is terrible and you should be scared and it's something that you're going to hate the rest of your life. It's a huge memory. Like I said, we're living through history. Like, this is something that maybe our kids, our grandkids are going to be like, what was it like? Like, so exciting because it's different.
Because I always remember, like, I was a history student at school. Like, I'm a massive, like, I'm really, really big into history. And we did popular culture and social change. And I always remember coming home and talking about stuff that happened in like the 80s and the early 90s. And my mum was like, I lived that. She was like, I was alive. That's not history. She was like, I was alive during that. She was like, you know, I was in my 30s and I was having children during that. So that was just on the news. That was just my life. And, you know, for so many of us now, you know, there's babies being born during this who are going to learn about it in their history classes. And it's like, that's really, really strange. But I think it's really nice that you've managed to take that kind of positive spin on it of like, it's fine that this is how you felt. Like, this is not a normal situation to be in. And it's such a weird concept when you're not living it. It sounds like something out of a George Orwell novel. Like, it sounds like it should be in 1984. You know what I mean? So that's really interesting. of like how, you know, we're living it. But if you'd have told me a week before coronavirus hit that your whole life was going to fall apart, it's like, I don't believe you. Like, everything's fine.
And it has, like, especially for us, like, we're both in the theatre industry, in the arts industry. So for us, our entire world has crumbled. Like, everything has, a lot of people, a lot of businesses have had to change the way that they work and adapt. And people now are starting to, like, in phases go back to work. But for us, we're kind of like an industry that's kind of just been forgotten. We're just kind of left here unsure of what's going to happen, how we're going to come back from this, if we're going to come back from this. Some shows aren't even going to reopen. So,
you know, it's almost terrifying as a theatre graduate to kind of hear Cameron McIntosh say that some of like the 3 biggest shows in the world will not be returning until 2021. It's like, you know, that's massive, and that is a big deal, but no one seems to be paying attention to that. Like, I saw a thing earlier on that I read where someone had said, you know, bear with your theatre friends, because their whole life and what they've based their whole like being around has just fallen to the pits of like darkness, but nobody outside that circle seems to care. And it's like,
I think people outside that kind of bubble, outside the industry, they get it. That's like, oh, big changes have happened, like my work shut down, and oh, these shows aren't open. But to them, like, that's something maybe that's trivial. I think people don't appreciate how much money the industry brings into our country. And like, we've had so much extra time. Like, people have been watching Netflix series or watching films, or there's been some live streams of theaters, and people have been enjoying those and be like, oh, it's great, yeah, but they haven't actually thought about the industry and all the people behind it, especially the freelancers like me. They haven't thought about, are we going to have more of this in the future, and how can we support that? I feel like if you're outside of the bubble, arts is something that's maybe quite trivial to you, but to us, it's our whole world. So it's,
and as well, like, I wrote a piece the other day which was quite controversial for someone like me, that did say, you know, keep the theatres closed. But my point is that the government are trying to open up theatres to try and go, look, we're doing a thing for you. But they're opening up theatres and they're not allowing live performance. So it's like, you're not giving anybody their job back. You're not actually doing that. Nobody is benefiting from this move. All you're doing is kind of suppressing that voice and going, oh, but we did this for you, so be quiet for a little while. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's not helping me. That's not helping anybody.
It's not real understanding. It's making them look like they're trying to do. It's performative. It's all performative. Like, look, what we're doing this thing to help you, but you don't actually spend the time behind the scenes doing the research and looking into what that industry looks like and how we can actually practically help. They've not looked into that. They've not thought about it. They've not thought about the small percentage of freelancers that are maybe new graduates like me that fall between the gaps. We fall through the cracks of government support. But overall, we're looking like we're helping, so that's enough. But like, compared to other countries, the arts emergency funding that the government have put in, it's next to nothing.
Absolutely not.
Look, we're doing our best to help everyone, and our country's great. It's like, unfortunately, we're not. We have a very high death toll, and a lot of our
very small
staff are under supported, and a lot of our industries are under supported. It's not enough.
But here's another question: how are you finding how kind of Scotland are governing it over how England and the rest of the UK are kind of governing it?
I feel like Nicola Sturgeon is a stronger leader than Boris. I feel that's very clear. You can watch her talk, and she is confident in what she says. She is strong in her messaging, and she's been very clear from the start that she will protect lives and the NHS at all costs. I think Boris is interested in getting the economy back going, and we need to do that, but at what cost? I just think overall Nicola has just been stronger and clearer through this whole thing, and she's not backing down. Earlier on, in one of the debates that I watched, and I think it was Prime Minister's Questions, and he was asked, should people in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland listen to the overall UK guidance from the English government, or should we listen to our own First Ministers? And Boris said that he made a statement about how we're a united kingdom, and basically they need to listen to his messaging over their own first ministers, and that's really challenging, because then who do you listen to?
Yeah,
Clearer messaging
exactly.
is what we needed. We don't need a, oh, go outside but have this many people, and then living back near the border, the rules change as soon as I live 10 minutes from the border. As soon as I drive over that border, I now have to wear a mask in shops, but it's not being enforced by shops. And then in Scotland we have to wear a mask on public transport, but when I cross the border on the bus, do I take my mask off? Like,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
been clear enough. People
no,
aren't, I think the government, like Boris Johnson said, we're going to trust the common sense of the British people. Really?
no,
How's that working out?
don't. Like, this whole situation has become like, who can we shift the blame on? And it's
Yeah.
like, stop trying to shift the blame from the people that didn't do the right thing. You know, the WHO have been dealing with this since like way back in December, when they found out that it was in China. Yes, they found out late. Yes, they didn't actually give as much credence to it as they should have done. But who was to know? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and even then, continuously, when Italy went down and Spain went down and France went down, we still weren't listening. We still weren't doing anything about it.
But I don't think pointing the finger at whose fault it is right now is helpful. I think we're living through it. I think reflecting back on it is something when we've got through it and it's eradicated everywhere. I think then we can go, okay, what did we do wrong? What strategies are we going to put in place? What have we learned from this? Rather than now being like, well, it's going to be this person that causes this, or this group of people that cause a second spike. That's not helpful. What's helpful right now is testing and looking at resources of how we can help the NHS. And
so stressful. But it's like right at the beginning of lockdown, I deleted and completely muted notifications from my news app because it was just constant notifications every single day, 5 or 6 times a day flashing up on my home screen. And I was like, I had this conversation within my family home of, I know you don't need to keep telling me. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to hear it from 7 different sources that say something ever so slightly different. I know what I need to do. I'm implementing that. Leave me alone. And that was kind of how I felt about it, was that I became then very frustrated that it was kind of, here's another bit of information. And I was scrolling through Facebook in the morning and just absorbing all this stuff. And it was all I was ever talking about with people.
Yeah.
And then I went, I can't talk about this anymore. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
It's overwhelming. I feel like there's going to be a second pandemic after this is over of people who struggle with their mental health, because like you say, you're bombarded with on your news app. Like, I think that's really smart that you muted it, because constantly I was getting this many deaths, this has happened. It was all on social media. It was overwhelming. It was just all negative. And it was just a lot to cope with. And people have to stay informed, absolutely. Like you're saying, you need to know the message and you need to know what you need to do to protect those around you, protect yourself, protect the NHS. Like, you need to know the basics of what's going on, and keeping up to date is important. But I feel like at some point, you do just need to switch off your phone and be like, I need to take a step back, because I feel like it was really detrimental to my mental health. The amount of time that I was spending online just looking at figures, and it's been a lot.
But sometimes people are scrolling through Instagram and just need to see that post that says, it's okay not to feel okay today.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not getting that at the moment. And things are changing and things are frightening, and that's quite scary.
It's terrifying. I think we've never experienced this at all. This has never happened before. So like for us, this is new. This is scary. It's really tough. And I think I kind of touched on that in my letter, that it's going to be shit. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel alone. You're going to feel scared.
Yeah.
And those are okay. Like we've talked about before, like sometimes, especially in lockdown, you just wake up and you just feel crap. You feel unmotivated, you feel tired, you feel overwhelmed by bad news, you feel alone, you feel scared. And that's okay. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, you're going to be irritable. You're going to be annoyed at people for no apparent reason. Do you know what I mean? You're going to nitpick at things from someone that you care about just because they're there and it's all you can think about. Do you know what I mean? You're going to then start having negative thoughts and opinions on other people, because that brain view then turns outside and externally, and you start looking at things very pessimistically.
You see, like you do turn to the people around you, and for a lot of the time, either people are locked down on their own and they're turning against themselves and feeling negative about themselves because they're on their own, missing others, or like you and me, we've had to move back home to our childhood homes with our parents, which is difficult to navigate. I mean, I don't know if you want to like touch on that, but you do kind of, it's frustrating because you're an adult. We're both 22 now. We've lived independently for 3-4 years. We've had uni, we've built our careers, or the start of our careers, and now it's like you're back home with your parents and it's like you're 16 again, and
it's
it's
defeatist.
so tough.
Yeah, and I think I know I said to you very early on in this whole pandemic, it's no longer 2 adults and a child. It's now 3 adults living in a house. And it's like, and you look at that when you first moved to uni of like 3 18-year-olds, 6 18-year-olds living in a very tight, close space. You got pissed off at each other. You shouted at each other. You told each other that wasn't supposed to go in that cupboard. You shouted at each other because the kitchen wasn't clean. You were annoyed because there was too much noise going on. It happens because people live differently, and
you're cohabitating, like you say, you're adults now, and you're an adult coming back to your childhood home, which can be kind of tricky to navigate. And I think it's been a learning experience. Like, I think it's important to look at how you live with other people, no matter what age, because you're going to go through stages of living in different houses, different people, sharing your experience with people. And I think it's been frustrating at times because you're very different people with very different routines, and that's okay. It's learning to be tolerant and to be open to other people's ways of doing things and other people's ways of living. And so you're learning to live with other people, you're learning from them, you're learning to be more patient, more tolerant. And I think you're just having more time. Like with my work, like after uni, I was moving around the country, I was working all the time, long hours. I wasn't getting time with my friends and family. And now I have a lot of time with my parents, which in a few years' time, when I'm super busy, hopefully working and building my career, I'll be really grateful for that I had that time at home just to breathe and to take a bit of time. And it might have pissed me off that they have certain routines than me, but it's learning from other people, and it's just taking a bit of time to readjust and to be at home and just to breathe and to live. So I think lockdown's given us a lot of time, which is great. Definitely. I think there's been a lot of positives. Like, look at us, we're finally recording a podcast. We're doing it.
And it's kind of, I've had that chance of like, you know, I always say when I'm away from home, I really just want to go to the pub with mum and dad. And it's like, I just really want to do that. And it's like, you know, we've kind of made a bit of a thing over the weekends of like, let's get some different beers in and let's try them and let's do good food and, you know, chill and do something fun or watch a film. Or, you know, a couple of weeks ago, like the other night, we watched the Queen concert on the Queen documentary on Netflix and stuff. And we're just trying to make that time. And it's like, it's so lovely that I'm actually getting to spend that time now, because I've just spent a year of really, really missing that. So,
it's just having that time. It's having time that we may feel like, oh, it's a real waste because I could be being productive, I could be doing this, but actually it's time well spent because it's time with your parents that aren't always going to be here. So like it's just taking time to do something different, and I think we just need to live it and appreciate it and take it for what it is right now, and not be like, oh, I can't wait until I can finally do this. Like, just living it. It's what's happening. So go with it.
Absolutely.
Great. So shall we read your letter?
Go on then.
Okay. So just like I did with Cathryn, she sent me across a letter. I have not read it. This is my first impression of what she's written about lockdown. So let's have a little look, shall we? Okay. So she has titled it, Dear 25-year-old Self. Okay, so you're writing forward. So it's interesting that we've gone for different perspectives. So I'm excited. Okay. Dear my 25-year-old self, I hope you are well. I hope lockdown is finally over and that life has returned to some normality. I am sure that by now you have a job again and some sort of income. You'll be looking back now at me, your 22-year-old self, and thinking, what were you worrying about? I hope. You will have seen your boyfriend again. And I really hope your first meeting after lockdown was exactly as you both wished it to be. I really hope you look back on your time in lockdown and don't regret the decisions you made. You decided not to break much of your personal lockdown even when places started to open again. You decided not to see your boyfriend until things were more normal. You didn't move in with him, and you didn't go for universal credit. Remember, all of this was right at the time. Are you still doing your blog? Have you got anything from it? Are you still working with Emerge Production House? I really hope you are. I hope that right now you're loving your blog and writing again, and I hope you could carry it on once you started working again. Did you get one of the jobs you applied for? I hope the rejections don't bother you anymore. Not that they bothered you much in the first place. Have you moved into the flat of your own that you were dreaming of pre and during lockdown? I hope you and Alicia get your final 6 months of your 12-month dream. Things are much better now than they were when you were 22. I can assure you of that. Love, 22 you. That's really sweet. I like that. So you've touched on a few things there.
Yeah.
So firstly, how was it hearing someone read your personal letter? How did that feel?
Weird. I think hearing it in somebody else's voice makes it sound more sentimental. Because I'm writing it from within my head and I'm kind of going, this is how you feel. It all sounds like quite like normal things that I've now come to terms with. That like, this is happening and this is happening and you're not going to be able to do this and that's fine because you can't. Whereas when somebody else reads it and I can kind of see somebody reacting to it going, that's really sad or that's really sweet, I kind of go, oh yeah, there's the emotions that are attached to those things that I've kind of just not got right now. But yeah, I think that's quite interesting.
Do you feel like when you write something, you're like coming to terms with it, and by writing it, you're externalizing it and you're accepting it, and you become a bit detached because your writing is kind of like your craft. So you're editing something and you're writing it up, and suddenly you become detached from the original emotion you felt when you wrote it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So having me read it back and react to it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that like different like perspective.
Absolutely. How did you feel reading it as my friend? How did you feel?
Your choices. So the main thing that I picked up on it was your relationship with your boyfriend. Like you obviously are looking like forward together and looking into what's gonna like happen there, what's gonna come of that, which is lovely. But obviously your decision to not see him and like how tough that must be.
Like we've now seen each other once in this whole time. And it was only for like an hour. Really. And it's kind of like we've mutually made that decision. And I've had this really difficult thing where, you know, when I've kind of expressed that I miss him, people try and fix it. People try and say, well, but you can do this now and this is okay now and you could always do this and you could always do that. And I'm like, I'm not telling you to fix it. I don't want you to fix it. I've made my decision. I don't need you to give me the solution. I know the solution. I've chosen not to do that because it's not safe and it's not fair and it's hypocritical of what I think with what other people have been doing.
You've made your choice, and I think once you've made that like in your head, you stuck by it, and I think you need to just do what's right for you in that situation, your relationship. Like no one can tell you, oh, but you can see each other from this distance. Like you are kind of farther away from each other now, distance wise, as to where you're living. So like it's difficult. Like I can't imagine it. Like and I know lots of people are in that boat where they've had to choose whether they isolate at home with friends, on their own with their partner, and I think it's good that you recognize that like now isn't the time for us to be together 24/7. It's not always healthy for your relationship. I feel like I'd hate that.
I said, you know, very early on, I don't want this to be the reason that we live together. And I don't want it to be the fact that I can't leave and you can't leave to go and do something separately or to go and see other people and have that outlet. And don't get me wrong, it's been hard and it does have an effect on how you are with each other because you sort of forget how to be in a relationship because your relationship ceases to exist. You still talk to each other every day and you still have that connection with that person, but what makes that a relationship ceases to exist at all. And that's really hard.
A real physical,
yeah,
you're present with each other. That's how you create that bond. Like I get people do long distance and that's tough and I could never personally do it. But
you know, I'm not sort of sitting there going like weeping every week because I can't see him because my body has just gone, we've got to deal with that now. Like we've got to calm that down. Otherwise, I just wouldn't do anything. And my whole being would just be sad. And like, you know, you can't live like that.
Yeah. I feel like it's okay to be like, to recognize that like you say, your friends were trying to fix things. It's like, you can't fix this right now because this is just a crap situation to be in. Like it's tough for lots of different reasons. It's tough for people losing relationships. It's tough for people losing friendships, their income, their job, their routine. Like people are losing so much that sometimes it is just the fact of this is just really sad and really weird and it's not normal, and you do have to come to terms with that, like you say, or it'll eat you up. Like I think you do have to be like, this is the situation right now, but how can we best utilize this time? Like let's not be sad all the time, and let's not just dwell on what could have been and the holiday you could have been on, or people, the places you could have been. It's like where you're at right now, and how can we make the most of it? Do you know what I mean? And that just means like adapting, like changing the way you communicate. Like I'm sure you guys like call all the time and like message. You maybe like you'll watch different things separately and then talk about what you thought of that, or do you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like people are finding new ways to connect with the people they love.
So we've been doing like
that intimacy, you don't have that physical contact, but like tagging each other in a little meme, like that's
so it's like
someone like even more.
We have like, you know, we've kind of done like a bit of a date night kind of style thing where we either FaceTime or we call and then we watch something at the same time, or we'll send each other quizzes and see what the answers were that we got, and like, you know, like BuzzFeed quizzes of like, which Disney princess are you? And it's like, it's funny and we have a laugh about it. And when you have that connection on that one night, it kind of just reignites that thing of like, this is a good place and we're okay and everything's fine. We've just got to bear with this feeling right now to get to the next stage.
But you're still learning about each other, and you're learning to love each other in different ways. And I think that's really special. Like not many people can say that. So and I just wonder, like, I wonder how that's gonna change. Is it gonna change back? Like, because obviously in your letter you're looking forward to like a few years time, and obviously it's difficult for us to imagine, just like it was difficult to imagine this even happening. But now it's like difficult to imagine the world back to normal.
Not like this.
I just feel like, how are we going to adapt? Are people going to struggle to readapt? Like I just said to you, I went to the garden center before to pick something up, and I suddenly felt really anxious and really claustrophobic. I was wearing a mask and I was very aware of everyone, and obviously like thinking about moving back to London in a couple months, like am I going to be okay? Like am I going to cope? Like how are we going to deal with getting back to normal? Are we going to go back to normal? Because this has, I feel like it's been really important to experience, because our whole world is just flipped upside down, and I feel like sometimes we need that complete change in our life to reevaluate how we're living, and are we making the right choices, and what relationships are worth our time, and what are we actually using our time the way we want to be? Are we too busy to do things that we love? And it's like giving us this time to reflect on like, when we go back to normal, like what kind of normal are we going to be going back to?
And it's like, but how has the world not taken a huge step back and gone, right, these are the things that need to change? Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, the fact that there were dolphins again in the Venice canals because no one was using them, and the ozone layer has started to repair itself again. It upsets me and it makes me quite angry that people are not seeing this as a catalyst for good change.
Hugely.
Do you know what I mean?
You've really started thinking about how we're affecting the planet, like the fact that just by reducing travel and work and congestion has really made an impact.
But as well,
we've got more time now to make conscious choices, and we're maybe shopping more ethically online, with like smaller businesses are being supported, and we're making more smart decisions on our food shops, because we're actually having to think about what we're cooking and eating, because we need that routine. And it's like,
and as well,
time for that now?
You know, people thinking about more creative ways of enjoying your time at home. You know, we my family attend a festival every year, and they did an online version of it where they played footage from previous years and stuff. And we did a festival in our garden. We had some beers and we sat outside and we lit the candles and stuff, and we watched it outside. And you know, it was kind of like, that was a really nice evening and something to really look forward to. And again, you know, I've had evenings where we were meant to go and see my favorite comedian, so I put one of the DVDs on of him and we had a Mexican night. So we like had Mexican food and we watched this DVD, and it was like, it's not quite what it was meant to be, but it was something, and it was something to look forward to.
Hugely. Yeah, now people are out of work and they've had more time to actually focus on little projects that they've wanted to do for so long. It's like, why were you like slaving away at work? Obviously you need an income, but think of what you were missing out on,
Yeah.
your other passions. And I feel like people have finally had the time to actually explore what they love to do. Like I've started exercising, like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
working in theater, my sleeping pattern is very different. Like working on a show, like it does change. It's a lifestyle, and it
Yeah.
changes your routine and your focus. And you might not have time to go on a run, or you might just be exhausted from a really busy tech week. Like there's so many factors that our lives are just so busy that we don't have a lot of time for ourselves. And now in lockdown, a lot of people have been locked down on their own or in small groups, that they've had time to actually focus on themselves and what they want to do with their time. And that's been amazing. Like I honestly think it's not all doom and gloom. Like we've had some positive things come out of lockdown.
Definitely.
I feel like people have this expectation when they're working of like achievements have to be really big to be celebrated, but now our lives have been really kind of like shrunk and simplified. It's like the small things that we're proud of, like, oh, I
Yeah.
tried this new recipe today, or oh, I
Exactly.
started a book, or I tidied something, or
Yeah.
even like I got out of bed and I just
Mhm.
got up and did something, like I went on a
Yeah.
walk. Like
Yeah.
we were allowed one walk or one jog or one cycle a day, and that suddenly became like a reason to celebrate. Like I'm gonna really enjoy this lovely long walk, and it's like enjoying the little things that I
Yeah.
feel like in a world that's so oversaturated with so many things to do and things to achieve and things to strive for, just being content where you are right now and just doing simple little things. We've learned to value that, and I think
Like,
that's what I want to take forward.
yeah,
I
it's
feel
been really
like
nice.
we've reached an ending. So to round off our discussions each week and kind of reflect on the topic that we've talked about, we're going to ask 3 questions. We're going to ask, what would we tell our 16-year-old self? What would we tell our 30-year-old self? And what would we tell our current self about the current topic that we've discussed? So, Cathryn, what
Hello.
would you tell your 16-year-old self about lockdown?
I would say, um, don't hold back on the things that you're going to do just because lockdown is coming. Take all the opportunities and, you know, make sure to enjoy them. And don't hold back on stuff that is to come in the near future. What would you tell your 16-year-old self?
I've not thought about my answers. Oh. I have a lot of things that I'd like to tell my 16-year-old self, but we'll get to those.
In regards to lockdown.
um, I would tell her not to take things for granted. Don't take your freedom for granted. Don't take going to the cinema for granted, going shopping, the theatre. Take every opportunity you can to spend time with your friends and your loved ones. Don't take anything for granted. Just enjoy it while you can. Cool. What would you tell your 30-year-old self, your grown-up lady self?
Grown-up lady self. I'd probably tell her that things are probably a damn sight better than they were when you were in lockdown now. And that you're kind of out of the dark at this point, and nothing from this point on can really phase you. Kind of, you've lived through a pandemic, everything else is going to be all right. So what would you tell your 30-year-old self?
I would tell her that I hope she still takes some time for her and takes some time just to like reflect and just take some me time, because we've got so much time now to focus on ourselves and what we love doing, that I hope I still have time to do that when I'm older. Yeah.
Good.
What do you want to tell your current self? What have you reflected on lockdown?
Stop reading into everything. Stop reading into everything that you think and that you feel, because it might not be true, because there's a lot of stress flying around at the moment. So give yourself some time, don't read into it too much, and, you know, just kind of take things as they come, and yeah, let it go. And what would you like to tell your current self?
Just want a reminder that not every day is going to be a good day. And I think that's okay. We're living through some crazy shit. And some days are going to be really productive and really great, and I'm going to feel really great and I'm blessed to have this time. And other times it's going to be really sad and I'm going to miss my job and my friends. And both are perfectly valid feelings to feel. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's it.
Amazing.
Did we just record our first podcast?
Oh, yeah. So I suppose we ought to say thank you so much to everyone for listening to our first ever episode of Uphill from Here. Even if there's only one of you, hello, and thank you so much for listening. So I've been Cathryn.
And I've been Amy. Thank you for listening. And we'll have our blog and email and all our platforms set up soon, and we'll share those with you as soon as we have them live. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That went pretty well.
Yeah.
I feel silly. But I should have got those braces when I was like 15. I've lost where I was. What was I talking about? Oh dear. Okay.
Right.
Wrap this shit up. Oh, my hair.